we'd like to welcome Rabbi Kalmach, Rabbi Shliach to New Jersey, who has the biggest Chabad house in the world, and I think one of the biggest Chabad houses in the world. It used to be almost the biggest Chabad house in the world, and he's very akacht Mashiach, and how to make it part of the shlichus. In fact, I hope he wasn't planning to say this today, but I want to say I heard an amazing story from him where there was a company that made strawberry tarts for breakfast, and after many years, so a bunch of people sued them because they realized there's no strawberries in there. They said you can't call it strawberry tarts if there's no strawberries. So he said a shliach without Mashiach, it doesn't work. There has to be strawberries in there. So we would like to ask Rabbi Kalbach to please inspire us, as they say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm right now stopped on a highway. I hope nobody else stops me here. You can hear?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. If I get stopped, I'll have to move on by a trooper or whatever. Rabbi Majeski, just to get the story straight, it's important to get a story. The company is called Kraft Foods. It's the largest food company in the world. And the week of the Kinus HaShluchim, the front page of the Wall Street Journal had a story. This story made it all over the world, but it was the front page of the Wall Street Journal that Kraft Foods was being sued for $5 million because they made a Pop-Tart, which is the most common breakfast food in America, and they called it strawberry Pop-Tarts. And there was a picture of a strawberry on the cover, and that was it. The lawyers found out that there's no strawberries. The Pop-Tarts are made out of apples and pears. And there's zero strawberry in the Pop-Tart. And they're suing Kraft. It's a class action lawsuit for $5 million. The week of the Kinus HaShluchim. So the bottom line is, if you don't have strawberries, don't call yourself strawberry Pop-Tart. You're apple and pear Pop-Tart. Alabavitcher calls himself a shliach, and doesn't use the word Mashiach in his shlichus, should perhaps be in the courtroom as well. That was the whole point of that story. So interesting story. It came out that week. The courts still have not ruled on the case, but it's in the middle right now. Anyway, today is Chof Zayin. Adar, I'm sure everybody knows. I don't know why I was called to speak in the presence of such great luminaries that you have over here on the line, the real speakers and the mashpiyim and so on. But whatever I can do to add some inspiration, I'll be honored. I'll be honored to do. I didn't know of this group called the Minatzchim. I never heard of this group before. I apologize. When I was first invited, I thought it was Tzanchanim I was being invited to, and I asked if I'm speaking for Tzanchanim. I was told yes. If anybody remembers, outside of the big Beis Hamedrash in 770, on the same floor, there were bathrooms. If anybody remembers, there were bathrooms, never clean, and they had a big sink. If you remember that one big sink, also not clean, and there were these towels that were hanging, these cloth towels hanging, always wet and dirty. And right after the Farbrengens, there was always a mad rush for those bathrooms, if you remember. And people, at first, I remember as a Bach, I would always allow the senior citizens, that the older Chassidim, to go first. They were rushing into the bathroom. And then they would come out and wash their hands. And I used to stand there at times, listening to the old people speaking while they washed their hands and dried their hands. The Rebbe once spoke a whole sikh about Miyu Yehudi, very, very strong, very sharp. The Rebbe had very big kindness to the Midyonim. The Rebbe kept saying the word during the Farbrengen, the Midyonim, the Midyonim. That Chaim Tashkente was standing outside of the bathroom, drying his hands, and he turns to one of his friends. He says, "Ich verstehe nicht. Was will von the Midinoim?" He says, "Was will von the Midyonim?" This is what he couldn't understand. What did the Rebbe want from the Midyonim? When the Rebbe was saying the word Midinoim. So when I see Minatzchim and Tzanchanim, we should all be Tzanchanim and grow quickly and do the job that we are meant to do to bring the Geula B'Karev Mamish. Today is an interesting day, and some of us, I mean, Chof Zayin Adar means a lot, but for some of us, Chof Adar also means a lot. Chof Adar was the last Sunday that we were able to be there for dollars, and we were able to be there to get a bracha. And I have a Chof Adar story I'd like to share. It's a story that has not made it to the public. In that time, in those years of before Chof Adar, there was a couple living by me, an Orthodox couple, and they were married for 11 years, and they had no children. They used to give me money. I used to visit them, and they told me they're going to adopt. They're going to start the adoption process. So I asked them if they ever wrote into the Rebbe for a bracha. They said no, they never did. I said, why not? And he said, because they don't believe in it. They're Orthodox, they have their beliefs, but they don't believe in this writing in. So I said, what do you got to lose? Write into the Rebbe and ask for a bracha. You got nothing to lose. So they wrote a letter, and the letter was sent in approximately December time, and that was it. They never got an answer. And 5 months went by, they had no answer. And around 5 months later, I wrote into the Rebbe a whole duch. And in my duch, I wrote into the Rebbe that this family had already written in for a bracha for children, and they had not received an answer. And I'm asking for a bracha for this family. The Rebbe answered me a bracha for this family in my letter. I immediately called up the wife and I told her that you have a bracha, and she burst into tears. But you heard it because she was not having a baby. Clearly not. She had received bad results from the doctors. And so went by another few months. I was afraid to call her again because we didn't hear any good news, and I had told her that the Rebbe gave a bracha, and so went by another few months until the middle of the summer. It was already the month of Tammuz and Av, and I'm in an office in New York, and I see her cousin, and her cousin says to me, "Do you know what's going on?" I said, "I'm embarrassed. I'm afraid to ask." He says, "You better call them." I call them up, and they say, "Come down to our house right now." And I go down to their house, and they show me with great surprise this letter that they had just received. The letter was dated the 3rd of Shvat. The Rebbe writes to them, "Greeting and blessing. This is to acknowledge receipt of your letter of January 20th. As requested, I will remember you both in prayer for the fulfillment of your heart's desires for good. In your situation," the Rebbe says, "if you advise, have you tefillin, and the mezuzahs check to make sure they're kosher if they haven't been done within the past 12 months. This letter was written on Gimel Shvat, and she receives the letter in Tammuz. The day she received the letter, she found out that she's pregnant. You can imagine the simcha that she had. She gave birth to a little girl. The little girl's name is Aliza. And so she had one child. Within a few months after having one child, she calls me, she says, "I'm in trouble again." I say, "Why are you in trouble?" She says, "The doctor told me I'm going to have triplets now. And it's not a good situation. I should God forbid, abort some of them. I said, you wrote once to the Rebbe, what are you afraid of? Write again. She wrote again, and she got this letter from the Rebbe to her, and the Rebbe writes, and the Rebbe gives her tremendous bracha, and she had all triplets. Within a few months, she calls me again, I got to speak to you. Now she has twins. So from receiving her bracha from the Rebbe, first time, within a matter of 2-3 years, she has 6 children. After 11 years of no children. And I took her to the Rebbe a number of times, but she never took the children. She took her father to the Rebbe. So Chof, Vav, Adar, we finally made up that she's going to go to the Rebbe. And there's a video, she took all her children to the Rebbe. And she stood in front of the Rebbe with all her 6 children. And she says to the Rebbe, Rebbe, I want to thank you. The Rebbe looks at her. She goes, for my children. The Rebbe says to her, for which child? And she opens up both arms and she goes, all of them. And that day, the Rebbe was his face was very angestrengt. It wasn't an easy day the Rebbe broke into a big smile. And there was one smile, at least on Chof of Adar, that the Rebbe had. There was supposed to be another person that was supposed to show up that very same day also by the dollars. And he was a Syrian Jew, a Spanish Jew, and he had never seen the Rebbe, he had never come, and he was going through rough times. And every time I would try to convince him, and this time he promised me he's going to show up. And unfortunately, he never showed up. He never came. The next day was Monday, Chof Zayin. I was sitting in Chabad house at 4 in the afternoon, 4:30. And I get the beep, something happened. Nobody understood, nobody knew then what had happened. So I decided to immediately leave the Chabad house and drive to 770. I was on my way to 770. I passed the store of this Sephardic Jew. So I ran into the store. He was there. And I said to him, Chucky, where were you yesterday? He says, what do you mean? What's the matter? I said, Chucky, something happened now to the Rebbe. I don't know what. I know that the Rebbe fell. That's all I know. And I don't know if there'll be dollars again. That's all I said to him. And his immediate response to me was, he says, Borei Olam, he says, thank God I did not go. So I looked at him, I said, what? You're thanking God that you didn't go? How can you say such words? What do you mean? He says, thank God I didn't go. I said, why? So he says the following. He says, you know what it means to go to a tzaddik, any tzaddik. And when you go to the Rebbe, he says, that's the biggest thing in the world. And we know, he says, when you go to a tzaddik, he takes away all your sins. He says, imagine if I went to the Rebbe yesterday with all my sins. And today the Rebbe got not well. He says, thank God it wasn't me. He says, it wasn't my sins that made, this is the way he looked at not having gone to the Rebbe in Chof of Adar. I think we are shluchim of the Rebbe. We all have to say, not thank God it wasn't me, but thank God it is me. Each one of us needs to do what we have to do so that it should be me. It should be. I just overheard the story of the shliach in the Ukraine that gave up his gas on Shabbos. The chief rabbi of Ukraine, Bleich, that ran away, he's now making phone calls. And one of my balabatim called me because I got the same phone call. When the phone call came in for money, the phone number that was listed as a phone number in Minatzchim, New Jersey. So my gvir says to me, I got a strange phone call from the chief rabbi of Ukraine, and he's calling me from Minatzchim, New Jersey. What kind of a rabbi is calling from Minatzchim, New Jersey, if he's supposed to be in the Ukraine? I don't know how he got that number, but the whole answer is it should be me. Hopefully it will be me. It will be each one of us that'll be able to say that it was us that made this big change happen. I did see that Chof Zayin noted the kfiyus that was 30 years ago is the same kfiyus as is this year. It was Shalom Uberes. It was Vayakel, and then came Tikudei and so on. And just a couple of things that were said. I don't know how many everybody remembers, but there was a Sikha on Vayakel, Pashas Vayakel, and there was no Sikha on Pashas Tikudei. And the whole it's really the opposite of that. Each one is counted, which means each one stands on his own, separate. So it's interesting that year and this year there was Vayakel and there was Pikudei. And what do we take? What do we take out of it? Is the Rebbe did Vayakel. There's no question that the Rebbe did for us, brought us together as one. But then the Rebbe also told us there'll be a Pikudei. There'll be a time when you're going to have to stand on your own, each one, and bring about what has to be done. Each one of us has to literally stand up and do everything in our power to bring about this major change that the world needs. After Chof Zayin Adar, I did something which Rabbi Groner said to me. Rabbi Leibel Groner, who was a friend, a real masker, he was not happy with this, but I did it. I wrote a letter to the Rebbe, and I wrote to the Rebbe, it was our annual dinner, and I wrote to the Rebbe that every year we got a letter from the Rebbe by the annual dinner, and this year, l'chora, we will not get a letter. So I asked the Rebbe if there's something I can have from the Rebbe to be instead of the Rebbe's letter at the dinner. That's what I wrote. Leibel was not happy. I said, Leibel, I have a right to write in what I want. I'm asking for something. And a week or two later, Rebbe Leibel calls me and says, how many people are coming to the dinner? I said, 420. He said, come to Maskirus. And he gave me a package of $420. I made envelopes and I gave out these dollars to every person as a gift, as a bracha from the Rebbe, to every person that came to the dinner. And I thought that was the end of the story. Everybody got their dollars, went home. Until around 5 years ago, something interesting happened. There was a Lubavitcher Chassid, Nishkin Shliach, that does real estate in Manhattan. And the Lubavitchers that work in real estate in Manhattan and Brooklyn have their own website. They have their own blog, whatever it should be. So because he's a Lubavitcher, he's a Chassid, he never got $1 from the Rebbe, but he knows what he's supposed to do. So in between business, he puts on film with as many people as he meets in the city, in New York. There was one Jew that rarely puts on film with him. Every time he goes, he's too busy, he's this, he's that. So after many times of trying to put on film with this Yid, he decides he's not going to go waste his time with this guy. He can't do business with him. He can't put on film with him. There's nothing there to be done. He's going to give up on this Jew. But before he gives up on the Jew, he decides that he's going to make one last meeting just to say goodbye to him. And he goes to his office to say goodbye to this Jew. And there's another person sitting in the office, and the other person says to this Lubavitcher, being that you're a Lubavitcher, I have a gift for you. And he pulls out an envelope with a dollar bill from the Rebbe and says, I think this is for you. Lubavitcher, who had never received a dollar bill, went out of his kalim. Here I'm going to say goodbye for the last time to a Jew. I'm sitting in his office, so what happens? I get a dollar bill from the Rebbe. And he was very nispo, and he went and he picked up that envelope. He made a video of this story, and he put it on his real estate website to show all the other real estate people what happened. And what he said, mostly what got to him was that the day on the envelope, in other words, the day of the dinner, that this person received the dollar is exactly 25 years to the day that he handed him this Lubavitch the dollar. So here's a story of the Rebbe giving out dollars, not meeting these people. 420 people were in New Jersey. One of them got a dollar. 25 years later, for whatever reason, he meets a Lubavitch and he hands the Lubavitch the dollar so that this Lubavitch should not write off a single Jew. So if we're wondering after Chof Zayin Adar how the Rebbe is working and how the dollar, all these brachas things are working, we should see it. I have now a keshet back again with that Jew that gave the dollar. I gave him another dollar, so he shouldn't be missing his dollar. But this is the idea, I think, of Chof Zayin Adar that we don't see, we don't necessarily understand, but most importantly, the work is now upon us, upon every single one of the shluchim. The Rebbe spoke about the idea of birthdays. The idea of birthdays. The Rebbe spoke about that this time after the Rebbetzin Tismach. The Rebbe spoke about this thing of Chof Adar, about birthdays, which I didn't understand. The Rebbe says that a birthday is a time for everybody to think of what they're doing, and to realize why they're here. And these are all things that took place in the last you could say the last years, and the Rebbe is communicating with us. And I think this is the Rebbe is telling us your birthday is important, you are important, and the job will be carried out by you. And I think that's the message we have to carry through, each and every one. We don't understand it, the whole world we don't understand, but hopefully very soon we will be able to understand it. We'll take it from the Yad Mamish, that will take us all out of our goals, the big goals. Should have good news because of Mamish.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very, very much. And also all our international participants that are going to listen to the recording, Mitzvah Hashem. Today should be this Galus Take of Yad Mamish. Really appreciate you taking your time out. And
Yeah. Amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Mazel tov, by the way, no?
Ja, sprich mal halt mit ein lange Schebe brachs. Wir gehen und brachen.
L'chaim.
Mit solche freilige gassen in Baruch Hashem.
Awesome.
Baruch Hashem, al simchas bei allen.
Amen.
Simchas bei allen en als.
Simchas ha'geula.
Yeah. Chevra, I really think that the world is burning beneath our feet. And it's coming Yud Aleph Nisan 120 years. And we have to roll up our sleeves in a very big way. This is Nishka Pashtazach. the fact that there is such a turmoil in the world. I mean, I'm a pashat, I'm a chaptzach, and it begins to a bissel reintrachten on what's been happening the last couple of years. Like the sequence of these events, the way they're coming about. When was the world in a state of, I mean, chas v'shalom, but a nuclear threat is different this week than it was last week. I mean, it's a sicher nicht sein. But I'm saying the idea that there's such a possibility, and there's a guy who's, who's kind of cornered in the corner, and he's got a handle on a lot of nukes. The situation is one that calls for an awakening. Now, the MS, I'm planning to do a video today. It's time for I used to do videos every day, and then I stopped doing them a few months ago. And especially when things go mad in the world, people start asking, "No, what's going on? What's going on?" As if I have a direct channel with the Eibishter or whatever. It tells me nevuos. I try to read into things that are happening a little bit, and Chof, I'm saying things that are true, but I don't pretend chas v'shalom to know. But I do want to say something because people are waiting to hear some chizuk and something. There's a very fundamental idea, and that is that the world, people get excited every time something like this happens. Everybody talks Mashiach. And when things calm down, okay, everybody goes back to normal. And then when things happens, Mashiach, right to Mashiach. So there is this kind of this like the natural go-to, the natural go-to by 9/11 is Mashiach. The natural go-to by the Iraq War, Mashiach. The go-to, and all these massive Corona, immediately Mashiach. So everybody goes to Mashiach, and obviously you say one argues and says that people that are more Bali Hislavos, people that are Bali Midas, people that are Bali Amunah, but not so intelligent, say not that's not an Indian, they're not intellectuals, they go into that Mashiach mode immediately. Those that are more Bali Midas are calmer and say, listen, I take it with a grain of salt. There was a First World War. It's nicht gewesen Mashiach. It's nicht gewesen Mashiach. And this happens in nicht gewesen Mashiach. And all these events that took place, and it wasn't Mashiach. So was wär's den ganzen zedrüdelt, relaxed. And I think that there would be a justification to that argument. But I believe, I'm sorry for bringing, I believe very strongly, and I think this is the emes, that it's not I believe. It's not going to do with me. Once the Rebbe told us, in Tafshin, the Rebbe didn't say brachas. The Rebbe didn't say. The Rebbe wasn't. What makes the Rebbe's haftacha different than the Rebbe's statements? It's more than haftacha. What makes the Rebbe's statements different than every other statement said by any Gadol b'Yisrael throughout all of history regarding certain dates Mashiach should come? Everybody spoke about kitzin. And what is a kates? A kates is man mesugel for the Gula to come. The Rebbe didn't talk about kitzin. The Rebbe was giving us a progress report. The Rebbe Pasha told us the mahalt in terms of the avodah. If you learn the sichas, you learn the Aleph and Bein sichas. You see the Rebbe is giving us a progress report, and the Rebbe is basically saying, "What you get endikt avodah sabirunim. Esav vishen is bar gavod. Melech HaMashiach is already here. His chulpula say biyolam." So the Rebbe is already telling us facts. The Rebbe is not saying. So therefore, from Tavshin Nun Aleph, I think that the idea that every time we hear a little rough or rustle, or what you call it, of the leaf, that we get excited about Mashiach, it is not just a midistige, hegistige Indian that people are getting excited. This should be the right and correct reaction, because it's takazah. And like the Rebbe himself would say, that the fact that it didn't happen is appel otzim, why it didn't happen until now. The question is not whether this is Mashiach. And obviously, once the Geula is going to completely unfold, Beinayim, that we're going to be able to see it. We're going to see Melech HaMashiach. We're going to see Al Tzazei Galus Mamish, and we're going to see. Then we are going to retroactively see how all these events were directly related. Mamish, all the events that were going on, directly related to the unfolding Geula. But here's the thing: we're dealing a month. Not even a month before. About a month and a week before Yud Aleph Nisan, May of Esrim Shana, and suddenly the ganze Welt geht charan in such turmoil, in such a. It begs for a powerful response. it begs for a powerful on our end. So yesterday, a lawyer called me. I'm just excited because I picked up the phone and I see it's calling from the law offices of so and so. So it made the phone call a little more important. It's probably his office in his bedroom. But I go upon him. He calls me up and he's telling me, he says, Reuven, ich verstehe nicht. I much don't understand. Like, how do you make sense of what's going on? I mean, after the Rebbe's Mishpatim non Aleph, and after that, that's via Zoyshayach, something like this. And I told him I don't really have an answer. I'm confused. But I'm sitting and thinking about this. It's sitting in my head, and I'm thinking about it. There's a few nakudas that I think are very important. And nakuda number one is that the Rebbe then said Mashiach is beginning to be poyel is pulasei b'yolam, that he's beginning to neutralize nations. And if you take, meaning that people that war should be upgeflecht, that war should not be acceptable. So first of all, even in this event right now, Putin is ending up looking like a massive loser because the entire world is looking at him like a total lunatic, like a total meshuggah. Like, wie kommst du zu Tanazazach? And like, so if this happened 50 years ago, it would have been acceptable, but now it's not acceptable. The world is not accepting it.
Exactly.
I don't know what the outcome is going to be, but hypothetically, this is what I thought today. Hypothetically, what happens is, and it's very possible, that the Russians lose their will to fight. They don't want to because they don't feel justified in this war. And they suddenly they drain their weapons, and he's going like a madman, and he's trying to do whatever he's doing. And meanwhile, the entire steam behind him kind of like falls away, and the people are not interested in fighting. What is that going to be? That's going to be the ultimate death of war itself. War itself will have died in front of our eyes. That a leader of a nuclear power with millions with millions of weapons and an army that is like formidable army can't rally up his people to attack another nation because the Welt schreit that they can't understand, and his own people feel that they don't have an appetite for it. That will be the end of every war because in other words, the war is dying in front of our eyes. And maybe that's the Indian of Muchanas Goygu Magog. Maybe that itself is its Indian. I don't know. But this is interessant. I think this is very interesting as a possibility when we're talking about like how. But another point. The Rebbe says in the Parshas Mishpatim Sicha, the Rebbe says that who is the one who stops the wars? The Rebbe says this is the job of Melech HaMashiach Ba'atzma. This is not the inyanim that, there's certain inyanim that are given over to us. We need to spread Zayin, it's b'nei Noach, we need to do certain things. But the inyan of bringing about an end of all war is the inyan of Melech HaMashiach Ba'atzma. He is the one who does it. And the Rebbe brings the pasuk, V'shafat bein v'shafat bein ha'amim, of the Lashon over there. And the Rebbe brings it a dak. This is mamish b'pnim ha'sicha. We learned it in the Totals now. The Rebbe mamish brings it a dak. The Lashon over there is that if he will see, and when he will see somebody of the nations, one of the leaders of the nations misbehaving, he will tell that guy, shape up. Stop it. This is unacceptable. In other words, this is Mashiach's business that he needs to do this. So when we're watching a world that basically has not attacked, this has not happened in the last 30 years. Besides Iraq then, and the Rebbe pointed that as one of the simanim of the Geulah. Since then, this has not happened, and now someone is doing it. So this calls for us, I believe, calling for Melech HaMashiach, saying, no. Now, in other words, it creates the opportunity, and it creates the set for Mashiach to put this guy in his place. So when we're watching a certain kind of breach in the entire Mashiach atmosphere that we've seen till now, and we see suddenly a breach, something that seems to go against it, so what has to happen? So now is the time that Melech HaMashiach has to stand up and has to make a v'shafat bein ha'amim, head up it, stop it. So I don't know. I am definitely sure, this is my own conviction, that Lubavitch, we need to rally around the Rebbe now for Yud Aleph Nisan. Vayitan oiz lamalka. We need to give the Melech HaMashiach. We need to give the Rebbe koyach. Because the idea that we all know at Rosh Hashanah is that the Melech doesn't have koyach unless the people are mizbatal to him. There's something called kablu gzeiroisai, accept my gzeiros. But before there is kablu gzeiroisai, there's kablu malchusai. You have to be makabel malchus. And we were functioning around for 30 years and doing great things, but they were all within the context of kablu gzeiroisai. Everything that's being done for 120 years, what are we doing? We're making 120 mikvahs, and we're making 120 moistus, and we're making 1,200 new moistus, and we're making. These are all the pa'ulis of the Rebbe. But then there is there has to be an awakening. There has to be, like the Rebbe says, an awakening that it should be. What is the lashon the Rebbe uses over there? Hakitzu v'ranenu David Malka Mashiach, and that requires, and I believe, personally, I started making a tumult about this a few weeks ago. That we need to get together, Lubavitch, to come back with a Kabbalah Samalchus. Now it has, but and I didn't feel there was enough steam there. But right now, with this added uncertainty and with this added tension that there is in the world, I feel that we can definitely bring about this. Now I looked, if I can say, I looked at the letter that was given out for today, for Chof Zayin Adar by Rabbanim, across the entire spectrum of Lubavitch and Mashpia, all the way from the left. Like guys like Zalman Gopin, and these are not Menshichism at all. And people like, I don't know, whatever, there's a bunch of names over there. Very, 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 very center, there's right, there's center, there's left. And they all came together and wrote a nusach that today should be a day of tefillah and a day of added tzedakah. If you look at the nusach, you see such powerful lashonis that I have not seen for 30 years. When I say powerful, is lashonis which are very much like where people were not comfortable using those lashonis that they're using today. They're obviously addressing Chof Zayin Adar. They're addressing the absence of the Rebbe, but they're not calling that the Rebbe should watch over us from above. They're basically calling for Nakitzu Verananu. They're calling for Vahu Yigolenu. They're calling for in the letter they use the Rebbe's lashon, mamash the Rebbe's lashon that the Rebbe said in Chodesh Adar, that it should already in Chodesh Adar be niskayim the inyan of Yud Aleph Nisan, which is what the ultimate kisisa Esroish b'nei Yisrael. That melech that they see. What's the ultimate kisisa Esroish? That you take the Rosh b'nei Yisrael and your mamshechim, your moishechem as melech HaMashiach. The Rebbe said that should be, and that's the inyan of Yud Aleph Nisan, because Yud Aleph Nisan is shaykh to Osher. The toivel b'shemen razloi. That's where you get the shemen for the shemen hamishcha to be moishech melech HaMashiach. Now the fact that shluchim from across the board and use those lashonis of normal, and they're also calling. What are they calling for? That we should give Torah, tzedakah. Tefillah, tzedakah, and Torah. And what are they asking to learn? Okay, there's the Ta'ata Tetzaveh Maimer, but also the Nun Beisiches. They're saying Vayakel Nun Beis and the Gimel Shvatzich of Nun Beis. In other words, there is a very strong open identification with things that people suppressed for so many years. And now people are becoming more comfortable in saying it. Why? I believe it's a Himmelish Inyan, because we're coming now. If we don't, we stop for a moment. We do look in the Gemara and we see the Shavu Hashem ben David Ba, and it gives you a whole list of inyanim. I can't say, I didn't look at it today. I wanted to actually, it's one of the things, before I give my share today, I plan on sitting down with the Gemara, but the Gemara does give a whole list of inyanim. I don't know if we can figure out all the inyanim, but definitely the massive pandemic that shook the entire world fits into the inyanim that are discussed happening that year, happening over those 7-year period. And then the idea that B'Shmit Milchames, B'Shvias Milchames, and B'Matzah Shmita ben David Ba, and it all corresponds with Tafshin, with Yud Aleph Nisan 120 years. And all these things are coming together. No one knows Bevadayis anything, but we wait for Mashiach every second. But I just believe you can't ignore these things. And when we have all this happening, my conviction is that this is a chance given to us to roll out a thoughtful, non-extreme kind campaign. When I say non-extreme, yes, very extreme idea. The oidus to tell you that the Rebbe told us about in Nun Aleph and Nun Beis, to give the full 9 yards, not to hide anything, but as we spoke on other times, to use lashonos that people are more comfortable with and people can join with. We should get all of Lubavitch for Yud Aleph Nisan, literally 50,000, 100,000 Yidden subscribing to the Rebbe's Malchus, renewing Eksavis Kashrus, saying to the Rebbe, Hineni, we're here, in Lashonos that people could get Mashpiyim to endorse it. We spoke about it earlier. I didn't speak about it so much on the Minatzchim group, but we did. I spoke about it to individuals, and I got distracted. Not distracted. I just got busy with the chasana, so I couldn't be on it. But I believe right now it's an emergency, and if I think that we can all literally put everything aside. I know we have to do Pesach and we have to do Shulchan Manas and Purim, to really roll up our sleeves and give it a couple of hours a day. Literally, we're talking about what else should we be busy with than bringing about the final redemption. And to me, it seems like the pot is cooking; it's ready to overboil. And the fact that it's happening right before Yud Aleph Nisan is a clear indication that Chevra, we have to go for it. Those are just my own little 2 cents I wanted to share today. And please.
So what's the next step? As the B'zusha would usually say. B'zusha, I'm talking for you.
Number one, we have to come. They put out a cold card and it was on COL. Just a cold card on COL gets very few people. People look at it, they glance over this or that. There has to be an active team of a couple of hundred people who are going to push this thing. That's all that it needs. We have to gather together a group of people and explain to them the urgency, the awesomeness of this Indian. Let's give the Rebbe something. It's not just giving the Rebbe matana, but it's basically just the matana. It's not matana is a nice thing. We're talking about everything. We're talking about the ganze kavana.
So you want to start it on Yud Aleph Nisan, or you want to, like you said, Yud Aleph Nisan?
I think if we get Mashpiyim backing it, I don't see why we can't get it done by Yud Aleph Nisan.
And then doing a Malka, you want to do it together with the Malka?
The main thing is, if that's necessary, we'll do that too. But and Dafka not to hide from the Nekuda. I'm not talking about a campaign running to the entire world screaming that Rebbe's Mashiach, but a campaign amongst Lubavitch for us to appreciate that this is just a mistake. The Melech needs to be activated now. That's the point. The world is calling. We need to do this.
They're putting on the big Shabbos already. The Litzvish.
Yeah, the Litzvish are putting on everybody. But no one has the name.
Maybe that's the next step for them.
No, maybe they sind doch wer das ist. It's how long are we gonna be uncomfortable with?
Yeah.
How long are we gonna sit in the hot? It's ridiculous already. I understand. Okay, so given what I'm saying is we did 30 years of Fatas Mayanis, and we didn't want to rock the boat. Fine. But what's Fatas Mayanis? Fatas Mayanis, so that what? Are your days out? It's time for Kasimar already. I mean, did we forget? I think we forget certain things. And how about Meron last year? Was that not the most craziest story? How about Surfside in the past year? I mean, we get so caught up. You realize now on the news, everybody forgot about COVID. There's no COVID. Everything is Ukraine. But you're dealing with a series of events, and literally series of events. Did we not forget the crazy years of Donald Trump with Yerushalayim, with Rupa? These are not isolated events. That's all that I'm saying. Piece the pieces together. We're dealing with a world that's spiraling out of control, and I'm not saying out of control. It's shututzer. It's boiling. It's at the boiling point. And I believe that to sit and wait till everything that's on its own, it has to happen. It's gonna happen. But I think that's a much more dangerous thing, and it costs karbanas. If we can activate Melech HaMoshiach in the midst of this, and cause the Vakitzu Varananu to happen, then how is it that we sit back and count the blood and we don't do it? With all the good things we're doing, all the Gavaldig Inyanim that is being done, the Kavod Yud Aleph Nisan and is furthering the Rebbe is not the jalapeno, it's not the habanero. That's what I'm saying. You know, to wake someone up from the shluf, you have to give him a habanero. You have to give something a chiddush. The chiddush is as ganz lebabish state from Rebbe. Okay, we're not ready to say yechi, fine. But Rebbe. We know that we know that Goyal Rishon is Goyal Achnin. You are the one. You promised us, and we're here. We're your Talmid and we're your shluchim. We're your am, and we're ready. We're ready for your iskalos. That's it. Use any words. Your words. Don't use yechid. Fine. I believe that now this year we can do what we couldn't do all the years.
Don't forget, it's all happening in Ukraine, right? You forgot to put that connection.
Yeah, that's the Rebbe's
birthplace. All tzaddikim, Nezhin, the Bitzchik Meditchev, the Baal Shem Tov. What are you missing?
This is the. Yeah. We know clear, and the fact that the Russian soldiers, when generals went dafka to Lubavitch to them.
No, it's true. The whole world is looking at him like he's like a officer rocker.
Yeah,
okay,
and you see,
if I learned to hazen, Bekitza, if I learned to hazen, not only that, it's basically the whole communism is basically dying. He's like a leftover.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I'm thinking even further than that. If you look, I mean, on the one hand we say goyim magig upketan, but if you look in those nevuas, you see it talks about the Abish that says, I'm going to go and take him, and I'm going to pull him by his. Because one thing everybody's trying to figure out why he did this. It's like there's no the people are trying to figure out that this is like he's in a. Beyond. So it's clearly as matam geschleppt that someone pulled him. It's like some arangegangen. Like they say, a juk and cup is a man. That's what it is. And you can see clearly that's the Nevuah is talking about. Wow. So we can either sit back and watch it happen, or we can activate. And I believe that on this moment, two statements. If I'm not going to do it, then no one is going to do it. Each and every one of us has to say, I am responsible. And the second one is that's all part of one statement. Now's the time.
Okay.
The world is ready.
Before we get to this, the Laser I think is on. You want to ask Laser if you got the information? I think Laser is listening.
I was just about to log out. What did you want to ask me?
Oh, no, I was wondering, Laser, that label Estrin sent you a little while ago, a press release regarding the living Mashiach. Did you see it? He wanted you to give you final approval because your name is mentioned there.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Oh,
can you please send it to me, Label? Or what is it, an email?
Sure. I thought I did send it to your email, but
if you did, I must have missed it. Please resend it.
Yeah, let's get it posted at all the sites. It's a nice thing.
Okay. So that's about this. Look,
the question is who has the physical copies and how much are we charging for them, if anything?
No. To the websites. We want to send like a PDF, the one that we send to everyone, that people can see it as a PDF, not to change it or anything.
Not to order copies.
Yeah, you want to show everyone that it's out there and people can read it online, like at COL and all the other sites.
Reb Zusha, please.
no, I was listening intently to you. I love your prediction that how you perceive it's going to happen. This is wonderful. But even if it's not going to happen this way, es kann doch Chesed sein. Wir haben mentally sagen, von destet wegen. Es kann doch sein. Right? Whatever way it's going to be, but we did mention the Gemara, and I think it's important. The Rebbe said, Nun Aleph, I think it was, I'm terrible with the dates. The Rebbe said then clearly that we have to see how everything which is happening today, all these are not isolated events. You said those words, but it sounded like you're making your own. These are the Rebbe's words, that we should see all these events that are happening today are not isolated events. These are not occurrences. These are all part of the process of the Geula. There's no question about it, especially if you look in the Gemara. the Gemara that you mentioned, the Gemara Sanhedrin, Tzadik Zayin. I think that just about every detail fits in there quite well. Because the Gemara speaks about economic upheaval. The Gemara, when the Gemara says about and etc. This is in Vesati Gishmechem Bit, and this meant Pashat Parnasa, this meant the economy, this meant the business, and this is what's going on, the total turmoil in the whole world. And then for the Gemara to say that Ubeshishis Koilois, Rashi says, Los mit Koilois, Mashiach. Koil is about Mashiach, where the whole world is talking about Mashiach. I don't remember at any time that literally the whole world should be talking the last year or two about Mashiach the way it's talking about now, literally. I mean, it's mind-boggling. I mean, it got to the point that the way the Rebbe said, I'm waiting for the day when I eat that Rebbe Mashiach, as a result of That's what the Rebbe said. And this is exactly what's happening today. Right? So, and then the Gemara says, Uba Shviz, the Chura, what you think, if Sisoiva or Mesmechim, and we learn Torah and everything is back, Oichle, Bishoisim, Mesmechim, the Torah, Chazeres, there, sagt the Gemara. And then it says, what? Koilos, no, what have the Chet Zayin, the Chura should be the Gula. I'm going to throw in a wrench for you in the meantime. I'm going to give you a Milchabedot. What's this idea? The idea is what? That there is a complete chaos. Right? Wenn der Rebbe noch schaffen der Welt, ist gewähnt bei Oretz, heißt es Toyo Voyo, und danach dem Ruach Elikim Arachefes Amayim. Arachefes al Pnei Amayim. Guckt euch, der Ruach Elikim ist so, das ist Ruach Shel Mashiach, then it has to come back, nicht al Pnei Amayim, nor al Oretz, geht doch am meisten von der Toyo Voyo. Right? And this is what we're living, total chaos, complete upheaval. Nobody knows anything what's going on. So when there is this total chaos, that's when we're ready for change. We're ready for change and it's total chaos. I mean, my name is not Ifagan to the Rosh Hashiva and Etzisrov, exactly figured out all the Bilchamas and all the details that's going on. Parshanut of the Israeli military department. We're not Parshanim on these things. But we do understand that this is exactly what the Rebbe says. And as the Gemara says, the only thing we have to beg the Meibishter, don't wait the whole Shemitah, it's too long. Do it right now. But there's no question about it, but it's simply explaining to the world. This is not Simonim, this is Geula. I've repeated it in the past, I think Mrs. Tauger said it. I think it was Mrs. Tauger at one of the women's events, and they read in the Dvorim and said, ladies, she said, this is not rehearsal, it's the real thing. Right? And that's really what it is. And the Rebbe said, B'rayv Shira v'Zimra. What's that B'rayv Shira v'Zimra? So when did the B'rayv Shira v'Zimra not there? And I'm talking about Zayin Adar. The Zest Rachmon Ritzon Azam Matzev. The Rebbe is getting a Matzev was kann nicht reden, begashmius, or we can't hear him. Redt, aber mir hören nicht. Was Label sagt, that Yogad B'rayv Shira v'Zimra. Isn't this the same thing as the lady standing with the tambourine standing by Yam Suf? Same matzah. Right? The Yam Suf in the front, the Mitzrim in the back, and the ladies are saying, B'rayv Shira v'Zimra. They have the two people behind us, like the Rebbe, the Shira Lashon Nekeva, mit abzuführen, the Alma, the look for the powerful and wonder. And the Shemazach and talking and thing, and I will just add one thing what you just said before, but this Kol Korah, it's the most powerful Kol Korah, has everything in there. Really, it has everything in there.
I was in the spot that I saw.
Even the Kabbalah Samalchus is there. The Rebbe soll uns kommen nach Ruistem von Golis. Was ist das? Nicht Kabbalah Samalchus, was ist das? I mean, everything is there. So we have to push it further. And call it what you want, but this is what it is. If it quacks like a chicken, it acts like a chicken, it's a chicken. Right? If the Zox Steve Isis, das ist Kabbalah Samalchus. But we should be afraid to speak clearly. Again, darf sein ruhig, gelassen, but nevertheless, it's there. And in fact, last week, I think Ruben, you weren't on last week, or were you?
I wasn't on last week. I came on. I tried to come on.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, what was his name? the one who spoke last week, no? Levin. Moshe is his name.
Moshe
Yehuda
Levin.
Levin's father. What?
Yeah,
Right?
Rav Moshe.
Moshe Levin, yeah. So he said that he's going to approach. There's probably going to be, because every year they're making usually a huge event in front of 770 on Yud Aleph Nissen. I'm sure they're going to do this. I don't know who's doing it, if it's Oyer B'choyim or it's Adar or whatever organization is doing it. Hopefully they'll do it together. But he was going to approach them and see what's going on, that this year should be noch mit der größeren Straße. Und dort kann sein, in der Efen von der Oisies Hamasimois, right? That soll Tage sein, der Menschen Minim sagen, Rebbe, it's you. And the whole world knows it's you. And let me share with you a little story going back right after Gimel Tammuz. We had a billboard here in Montreal that there was a Chiddush in town. At that time, it was a novelty. That it was like you're playing a video. It was like the video was dots and it. That billboard was the first one in Montreal in the most busiest intersection, literally where the whole city has to drive by this particular intersection. Now, ich gehe auf ist das Belang Zayin. Die Sache Leute, wer der schon nicht da, soll es im Schuss im Beispiel. Sami Bitonte gewesen, Schuss soll dabei stehen. And I knew him. I said, Sami, I know you have this thing. The first thing you have to put onto this billboard was a message from the Rebbe. You have to inaugurate your billboard with a message from the Rebbe. This was the cost of fortune to do. So, what do you want? I don't want this went by either 7 seconds or 10 seconds or 30 seconds. I don't want much. I'll be happy with 10 seconds. 30 seconds will be better. Akitza, what did we have? So we had an image that the Rebbe is going like this. And the Rebbe says, add in acts of goodness and kindness to welcome Mashiach. A message from the Rebbe to add in acts of goodness of kindness to welcome Mashiach. A part of the message. Shlomo Besser, that some of you know, right, calls me up one day. At that time, he still lived in Montreal. Says Shlomo, he tells me, ich muss sagen, so Hein, jetzt hast du gehabt ein Telefon. I just had a phone call. Shlomo, was ist? In the middle of the day, he says, a guy called me, a businessman, from the Vimya, on board Chassidish, you know, this kind of type of people. And he says, he called me up in the middle of the day's work. He said, Shlomo, sie sind doch in ganzen Mashiach geworden. So Shlomo didn't know. Shlomo was a travel agent at that time, right? There's a middle day's work. Says, excuse me, what are you talking about? Wer mich schuge, was? Sagt, hast du gesehen, sie haben gemacht, dort weiter ein Billboard, ein größeres Billboard mit einer Picture von Rebbe. Der Vater sind sie mich schuge, was sind sie mich schuge? Du hast nicht kein Bild von deinem Rosh Hashiva, du hast nicht kein Bild von deinem Rebbe. Und sagte, ja, aber sie machen es als größer. Sagte, hat mehr Geld. Bei dir der Rebbe wert wenig Geld, bei mir ist der Rebbe wert mehr Geld. Why is he Mishuge? Why the term Mishuge? Sagte, okay, fine. Aber was ist das, macht mit der Hand? Sagte, was hat ich, als macht mit der Hand? Sagte, and schreibt dann, they have no other problems in your life now, middle day's work, than to call me and to tell me, as they say, the Mishuge, du bist ganz neues Mensch. Was bist du als Mensch? What's why are you so trottel? So he tells him the following, verbatim. And he says, look, me ken doch noch meinen, als lebt. Going like this. Me ken doch noch meinen, als lebt. Sagt ihm Shlomo, und was hat ich mit meinen? Was hat? Sagt er, von dem hab ich doch meure. Everybody knows as whoever it's going to be, is the Rebbe. For them, einer hat Meure und einer hat nicht Meure von them. But it's not a secret. The whole world knows it.
I heard Shabbos, I had Rabbi Lieder as the Zayde against the leader from
right, Sydney. Taka.
From Sydney.
Sydney.
He's a very geschmacky.
Yeah.
Here in Los Angeles now, but he's Shabbos Sheva Brachas, he was saying. He said he met Mordechai and David, and he asked him. He made the song Mashiach, Mashiach, Mashiach. Ay. He says, yeah. He says, yeah, because there's some Yidden when they hear Mashiach, Mashiach, they get excited. They want Mashiach. Others say, they're afraid for the business, for the this, for this. They go, ay. I go, well, jeder zufriedenstellen mit dem.
But you know what? Mordechai ben David said a geschmacken Wort. He said, Amali gewend the Nikunim von Mashiach is gewend Gaguim dik. And I mean that's a bracha in the right. All in the Nikunim von Mashiach is freilich in the Nikunim. I heard him b'shem him, and he's right. It's another approach. It's nicht Chabatzora b'meile Mashiach kushtacharis from dollars, as the Rebbe says. No, it's a freilich of Mashiach. And we have to present it to the world this way. We have to go out with the full. The world is ready. The world is waiting. The world. How it's going to happen? Okay, some have figured it out, and some didn't figure it out yet. But that's irrelevant. But the point is absolutely that it is no question about it. And you go to people with the Gemara. I've been doing this now for the whole week since Putin is Meshuggah geworden ganz. Okay, whatever it is.
Das war wie slapen. Es ist schön gewesen, Meshuggah auch mal.
So, ja, man lässt bekommen können. So kommen die Guten für Russland. Wie soll es sein, right? But whatever, you learn with people this Gemara, just go through the text. This is what the Gemara says. What does this mean to you? What does it mean to you? Do you have another, don't you see here a pandemic? And you can point a few things. Mesim, Anoshim, Noshim, V'tav, Chasidim, V'amshem Ma'aseh. Who does Anoshim? How does Mitamol Chasidim, Amshem Ma'aseh fit again in Mesim, Anoshim, V'noshim, V'tav? Unfortunately, yes, Chasidim, Amshem Ma'aseh. This pandemic had total reingeschleppt in one big bucket.
Where's that Lashon? Where are you bringing that Lashon?
The Gemara, Sanhedrin, Tzadik Zayin,
the Gemara itself or Rashi?
Yeah, the Gemara. The Gemara. Uba Chamishis, the Barvi. So you think
I have his Sanhedrin right here.
That's a Barvi.
Zayin, you say?
Yeah, Tzadik Zayin, Ahmed Aleph on top. Okay, right? And those things. Yes, we're all in it together. It's affecting everyone. Right? You're
right. Like I just wow. Unbelievable.
It's there, it's clear. And the Rebbe says, that we have to put it all into the same concept, that this is the process. It's a painful process. Yes, it's a long process. 30 years. Giving birth for 30 years is a long, long time. It's pretty painful. But not because it is painful, shouldn't be B'rov Shira V'Simra. Not because it is painful and it's long, Chas v'Sholem, we should give up. In halacha, in civil law, there is such a thing, I think, a statute of limitation, how long you can claim a debt, right? Or a debt, right? In halacha, there's no statute of limitation. Time doesn't change the reality. It makes it more painful, makes it more difficult, makes it more challenging, right? This is Avraham Avinu. Took him 3 days. Was it after him 3 days? I mean, we like them to get from Hebron bis Yerushalayim in a rush, living. That was that. The Rebbe started geschleppt. Why? Because the time could make him change his mind. The nisoyin of time is the most difficult nisoyin. So this is what we have to know. We have to hang him there. We have to go out, and we have to tell, and we have to share, and we have to scream, and we have to sing, and we have to beg. And rally the forces, no question about it. And I think he said it. If we go now, at least to some of them to start off, all those who signed this Kol Koire, and we'll go with the other one that you prepared.
Here you have the list. You have an amazing list of people that can sign on this thing, because you have people who signed already. If they said it already.
Yeah, they
use that nusach. You just use that nusach a bit different.
Okay,
but you have already a side. You have a side.
Yes,
'Cause
absolutely.
you saw already that they signed, they already signed their
Yeah,
name.
maybe you can ask them to build in this stuff together with the
Yeah.
final Kabla Malchusai, and let's go with it.
That's a great idea. I think if you, it's Mamash Hashgacha Pratis, I came out how much the time you want to do it. You see what happens.
We're proving you froze. California is
Ken
supposed
Shedden.
What?
He fell off.
He froze and we lost him. As they gate us. So anyway, so if somebody wants to get in touch with this with Reb Moshe Levin to find out whatever happened, with his he was going to find out what's going on. But given a gleich gesagt and
Okay, so the label, you're gonna send the email to Laser, right?
It went out. It went
You
out.
sent,
Yep.
he sent you,
okay, then follow up with him tomorrow. Call him. Goed, app zijn appel mamisch.